Nexus Station floated at the edge of known space, a massive wheel of metal and lights that never slept. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds passed through its corridors every day. They came to trade, to talk, to make deals that would affect entire star systems. The station was neutral ground, a place where even enemies could meet without fear. Emperor Vexarchon walked through the commercial district with his son close by his side. The Emperor stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in deep blue scales that caught the light like polished metal. Wings folded tight against his back, and his golden eyes watched everything with the careful attention of someone who had ruled for 300 years. He wore simple robes instead of his formal armor. Hoping to avoid attention, his son Kirek held onto his father's hand with both of his smaller ones. The young Dragonling barely reached his father's waist, his emerald scales dull and lifeless. His wings dragged on the ground as he walked, too sad to hold them properly. He had not eaten well in weeks, not since his mother died. The plague had come without warning to the Draxian homeworld. It took thousands of lives before the doctors found a cure. Kirek's mother had been helping in the healing centers when she fell sick. She died quickly, and there had been no time for goodbyes. That was 5 months ago, and Kirek still cried every night. Vexarchon did not know how to help his son. In Draxian culture, showing emotion was considered weak. Leaders especially were expected to control their feelings, to be strong at all times. He had tried everything his people taught him. He reminded Kirek that his mother died with honor, serving others. He told him that warriors do not cry, that he needed to be strong. He tried to distract him with lessons and training. Nothing worked. Kirek only grew more quiet, more sad. He stopped playing with other children. He barely spoke. And worst of all, he stopped eating. The nutrient paste that station services provided sat untouched in their quarters. The Emperor's advisors had arranged rooms in the diplomatic wing of the station. The quarters were large and comfortable, decorated with expensive art. But they felt cold and empty. Vexarchon found himself unable to stay there, watching his son fade away while he had no idea how to help. So he walked, hoping that different surroundings might spark some interest in Kirek. The commercial district was full of strange sights and smells. Shops from dozens of worlds lined the corridors, selling everything from rare minerals to exotic foods. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the crowds, speaking in hundreds of languages. The smell of cooking food caught Vexarchon's attention. It was different from the sterile meals provided by the station, warm and rich with spices. He followed the scent to a small restaurant tucked between a weapons shop and a clothing store. A sign above the door read, "The Cozy Corner," in several languages, including the angular script of the Draxian people. Warm light spilled from the windows. Through the glass, Vexarchon could see tables filled with beings eating and talking. Most of them were human, a species he had heard of, but never met in person. Humans were new to galactic society, having only made contact with other worlds 15 years ago. They were supposed to be weak and emotional, their single planet barely able to support them before they reached the stars. But the restaurant looked inviting in a way the formal dining halls of his palace never did. And more importantly, real food might interest Kirek, where nutrient paste had failed. The Emperor pushed open the door. A small bell rang, announcing their arrival. Conversation in the restaurant stopped as beings turned to look at them. Vexarchon was used to this reaction. Draxians were known across the galaxy, and an emperor was hard to miss even in simple clothes. A human woman approached them quickly. She was older, with gray in her dark hair and sharp eyes that took in everything at once. She wore practical clothes and moved with the confidence of someone who had been a soldier. "Welcome to the Cozy Corner," she said in heavily accented Draxian. "I'm Kate Morrison, the owner. Would you like a private table?" Vexarchon appreciated her directness. "Yes." Somewhere quiet, Kate led them to a booth in the back corner, away from the other diners. The seats were designed for humans but adjusted when they sat down. Rising to accommodate the Emperor's height, Kirek climbed onto the bench and pressed himself against his father's side, his small wings trembling. "I'll send someone to take your order," Kate said. She paused. her eyes on Kirek with an expression Vexar Khan could not read. Then she nodded once and walked away. The Emperor looked around the restaurant. The walls were painted in warm colors, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Pictures hung on the walls showing scenes from Earth, the human homeworld, mountains and oceans, forests and cities. It all looked very different from the harsh deserts and volcanic plains of his own world. A young human woman approached their table holding two rectangular objects that Vexar Khan assumed were menus. She looked nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she came closer. She had light brown hair pulled back from her face and blue eyes that kept darting between the Emperor and Kirek. "Hello," she said in Common Galactic, the trade language most species used. "My name is Amy. I'll be helping you today. Can I get you something to drink?" Her voice was soft and kind. Vexar Khan found himself studying her face. Humans were so different from his people, with soft skin instead of scales, small bodies instead of powerful frames. They looked fragile, like they might break if touched too hard. "Water," the Emperor said. "And whatever food you recommend for someone young who has not been eating well." Amy's eyes moved to Kirek. The Dragonling was staring at the table, his small claws tracing patterns on the smooth surface. Something in her expression changed, softened even more than before. "How old is he?" she asked. "5 cycles. About 6 of your years." Amy nodded slowly. "I'll bring some things I think he might like. Comfort food, we call it. Simple and warm and filling." She reached out as if to pat Kirek's shoulder but stopped herself, pulling her hand back. Vexar Khan noticed the hesitation. The way she respected boundaries, even while clearly wanting to offer comfort. It was strange behavior for a stranger, to show such concern for a child, not her own species. Amy brought water in tall glasses. The Emperor drank, but Kirek ignored his cup. Amy disappeared into the kitchen and returned with plates of food. There was soup in a bowl, thick and creamy with vegetables floating in it. Bread still warm from the oven, soft and golden. Strips of meat in a sweet sauce. Small cakes that smelled of honey and spices. She set everything on the table with care, explaining each dish. "The soup is easy on the stomach, the bread is fresh, the chicken is mild, nothing too spicy, and the cakes are a treat, something sweet for after." Vexar Khan thanked her. Amy smiled and walked away to check on other tables, though he noticed she kept glancing back at them. The Emperor pushed the soup toward Kirek. "Try this. It smells good." Kirek looked at the food but did not move. His eyes were empty, seeing nothing. Vexar Khan felt frustration and fear twist in his chest. His son was wasting away, and he could not stop it. All his power, all his authority, and he could not help one small child. "Please," he said quietly, in the private language only Draxians spoke. "Please eat something. Your mother would want you to take care of yourself." Kirek's eyes filled with tears. His small body started to shake. And then, like a dam breaking, he began to cry. The sound that came from Kirek was unlike anything the humans in the restaurant had ever heard. It started low, a soft keening that seemed to vibrate in the air itself. Then it grew louder, rising and falling in waves. It was not just crying, it was pure sadness given voice, grief so deep it seemed to fill every corner of the room. The other diners stopped eating. Some stood up and left quickly, unable to bear the sound. Others sat frozen, tears forming in their own eyes, without knowing why. The Draxian child's cry carried emotions that crossed all barriers of species and language. Vexar Khan felt his chest tighten. He put his arm around his son, pulling him close. "Kirek, please, you must calm yourself." But Kirek could not stop. The tears flowed down his small face, dripping onto his scales. His whole body shook with sobs. He buried his face against his father's side, his small claws gripping the Emperor's robes. The Emperor tried everything he knew. He spoke in the formal way his own father had spoken to him. "You are the son of an emperor. You must be strong. Your mother was a warrior. She would want you to face this with courage." The words made Kirek cry harder. Vexar Khan tried gentler words. "I know you miss her. I miss her too. But we must continue. We have duties, responsibilities. The Empire needs us to be strong. Kirek's crying turned into wails. The Emperor felt panic rising in his chest, an emotion he had not allowed himself to feel in centuries. He was the ruler of 40 star systems. He commanded fleets of warships, he made decisions that affected billions of lives, and he could not help his own child stop crying. Please, he whispered, dropping all pretense of formal speech. Please, my son, tell me what to do. Tell me how to help you. But Kirek had no words. He only had grief, and it poured out of him in waves of sound that hurt to hear. Amy had been watching from across the restaurant. She saw the Emperor's growing desperation, the way his shoulders hunched as if carrying an impossible weight. She saw Kirek's small form shaking with sobs, and she saw what the Emperor could not see, that his words were making things worse. She did not think. She simply moved. Amy walked to their booth and slid onto the bench beside Kirek. The movement was smooth and gentle, asking permission through action rather than words. Vexarchon started to object, to tell her to leave them alone, but something in her calm expression stopped him. Amy did not try to touch Kirek. She did not tell him to stop crying or to be strong. She simply sat there for a moment, her presence steady and warm. Then she began to hum. The sound was soft at first, barely audible over Kirek's crying. A simple melody, rising and falling like water flowing over stones. It had no words, just the gentle music of a human voice. Kirek's crying began to quiet. Not all at once, but gradually, like a storm slowly fading. He turned his head slightly, one golden eye peeking out from where his face was pressed against his father's side. Amy kept humming, her eyes half closed. She swayed slightly with the rhythm, her whole body part of the song. Then she began to add words, singing in English. Her voice was not trained or perfect, but it carried something more important than skill. It carried genuine care. Hush now, don't you cry. The stars are watching from the sky. Your mama's love will never fade. In your heart, the memories are made. The words were simple, the kind of thing mothers had sung to children for thousands of years on Earth. But they said what Vexarchon's formal speeches could not. They acknowledged the pain instead of denying it. They said it was okay to hurt, okay to miss someone, okay to cry. Kirek's sobs turned to hiccups. He pulled away from his father slightly, turning to look at Amy fully. His eyes were red and swollen, his scales damp with tears. But he was listening. Amy smiled at him, a gentle curve of her lips that promised safety. She continued to sing, moving into another melody. This one had a different rhythm, more playful. Little dragon, brave and true. The whole wide world is there for you. Rain may fall and winds may blow, but love will help you learn and grow. She kept her hands in her lap, respecting the space between them. But her voice created a connection stronger than touch. It wrapped around Kirek like a warm blanket, telling him without words that he was not alone, that someone understood, that it was safe to feel what he was feeling. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every human in the room watched the scene unfold. Some had tears on their own faces. Moved by the simple act of compassion, Kate Morrison stood behind the counter, her arms crossed, nodding slightly as if confirming something she had suspected about her employee. Vexarchon could not move. He stared at Amy, at this young human woman who had done in minutes what he could not do in months. She had not used authority or logic or appeals to duty. She had used something his culture had forgotten how to give: simple, uncomplicated kindness. Kirek reached out one small hand, his claws retracted so they would not hurt. He touched Amy's arm gently, feeling the warmth of her skin through the fabric of her sleeve. He made a soft, chirping sound, a question in the private language of Dragonlings. Amy did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. "It's okay," she said softly. "You can be sad. Sadness means you loved someone very much. That's not weakness. That's love." She started a third song, this one slower and sadder. acknowledging the grief instead of trying to push it away. When someone we love has to go away, we hold them in our hearts every single day. The hurt is real, and the tears will flow. But crying helps us heal and grow. Kirek's breathing steadied. His scales, which had been dull gray with sadness, began to show hints of their normal emerald color. He leaned against Amy's side, accepting the comfort she offered. When the song ended, the restaurant stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Kirek did something he had not done in weeks. He picked up a piece of bread from his plate and took a small bite. Amy's face lit up with a genuine smile. "That's good," she said encouragingly. "The bread is nice and soft, isn't it?" Kirek nodded. He took another bite, then reached for the soup. He dipped the bread in it and ate slowly, his eyes never leaving Amy's face. Vexar Khan felt something break open inside his chest. For 300 years, he had ruled his people by being hard and strong and controlled. He had buried every soft feeling, every moment of doubt, every tear. That was what it meant to be Draxian. That was what it meant to be a leader. But watching Amy with his son, seeing Kirek respond to gentleness in a way he never responded to strength, the Emperor realized his people had lost something important. They had become so afraid of weakness that they had forgotten how to be kind. So focused on being strong that they had forgotten how to comfort each other. Amy had not fixed everything. Kirek would still grieve. He would still have hard days. But she had shown him that it was safe to feel, safe to cry, safe to accept help, and she had shown it without judgment, without expectation, simply because a child needed comfort. The Emperor found his voice. "Thank you," he said, and his voice was rough with emotions he did not know how to name. Amy looked up at him and smiled. He just needed someone to tell him it's okay. Sometimes we all do. She stood up carefully, not wanting to disturb Kirek now that he was eating. "I'll be around if you need anything. Take your time." As she walked away, Vexar Khan watched her go. She moved between tables, checking on other customers, smiling and laughing with them, just a young woman doing her job in a small restaurant on a space station far from her home. Nothing special by the standards of emperors and empires, but she had done what all his power could not do. She had reached his son with nothing but her voice and her kindness, and in doing so, she had reached something in the Emperor himself, something he thought he had buried too deep to ever find again. Kirek ate slowly but steadily, finishing the soup and most of the bread. His eyes were still sad, but they were not empty anymore. He looked up at his father and spoke in their private language. "Father, can we come back here tomorrow?" Vexar Khan felt his throat tighten. It was the first time in months that Kirek had asked for something, shown interest in anything. "Yes," he said. "We can come back. We can come back." "I like her songs," Kirek said quietly. "They make the hurt less sharp." "Later." The Emperor nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He understood what his son meant. Amy's songs did not take away the pain, but they made it bearable. They said it was okay to hurt, and somehow, that made the hurting easier to bear. As they sat together in the quiet booth, Kirek eating small bites and Vexar Khan watching him with careful attention, the Emperor felt the shift in his heart grow stronger. His world had been so small, defined by duty and control, and the rigid expectations of his culture. But there were other ways to be strong. Amy had shown him that. And deep inside, in a place he had not acknowledged in centuries, Vexar Khan felt the first stirrings of something that felt almost like hope. Vexar Khan told himself he kept returning to the cozy corner for Kirek's sake. His son was eating again, talking more, showing interest in the world around him. It would be foolish to disrupt this progress by changing their routine. That was the logical reason to visit the restaurant every day. But the Emperor knew there was more to it than logic. The restaurant became a refuge from the cold formality of the diplomatic quarters. Every afternoon, Vexar Khan and Kirek would walk through the commercial district and push open the door to the small human establishment. The bell would ring, and Amy would look up from whatever she was doing, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Your usual table?" she would ask, even though she already knew the answer. Kirek would run ahead, his wings held properly now instead of dragging on the ground. He would climb into the booth and wait excitedly for Amy to bring him food and, more importantly, to sit and talk with him. The other customers had grown used to seeing a Draxian emperor in their midst. The initial shock wore off, replaced by friendly nods and casual greetings. This too was strange for Vexar Khan. In his own empire, beings prostrated themselves before him. Here, humans treated him with respect but not fear. They acknowledged his rank without being dominated by it. One afternoon, during a quiet hour when few customers were present, Kate Morrison joined them at their table. She carried a pot of tea and 3 cups, setting them down with practiced ease. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, already pulling out a chair. "Please," Vexar Khan said. Kate poured the tea, a fragrant blend from Earth. "I've been meaning to ask, how long are you planning to stay on the station?" The Emperor felt Kirek tense beside him. "I have not decided yet. Your people keep sending messages," Kate said. She was not accusing, simply stating a fact. "I hear things. Station gossip travels fast. They believe I am neglecting my duties." "Are you?" Kate asked bluntly. Vexar Khan appreciated her directness. It reminded him of his military commanders, who were allowed to speak plainly in private. "I have governed for 3 centuries. A few weeks away will not collapse the empire." "But," Kate prompted, "but they do not understand why I stay. They think I am weak, that grief has made me unable to lead." Kate sipped her tea, her eyes thoughtful. In human culture, taking time to heal is considered smart, not weak. We learned the hard way that leaders who ignore their pain make bad decisions. Amy approached with a plate of cookies for Kirek. The boy took one eagerly, his scales now bright with health. Amy ruffled his hair, a gesture that would horrify the Draxian court, but made Kirek chirp happily. "Can you teach me more Earth songs?" he asked in careful English. "After you eat your vegetables," Amy said, pointing to the plate of greens she had also brought. Kirek made a face but started eating. Amy slid into the booth beside him, and Vexar Khan found himself studying her face as he had done many times over the past weeks. She was not beautiful by Draxian standards, but there was something appealing in the openness of her expression, the way her emotions showed clearly on her soft features. "Tell me about human families," the Emperor said. "How do you teach your young to handle difficult emotions?" Amy looked surprised by the question but answered readily. "We try to let them feel whatever they're feeling. If they're sad, we comfort them. If they're angry, we help them understand why. We don't tell them to hide their feelings or pretend they're not real." "That seems chaotic." "It can be messy," Amy admitted. "But we think it's healthier than bottling everything up. When people hide their feelings for too long, those feelings come out in worse ways later." Kate nodded. "I've seen it in the military. Soldiers who won't talk about what they've been through, who try to act tough all the time. They're the ones who break down hardest when the pressure finally cracks them." Vexar Khan thought about his own people, about the strict codes that governed every aspect of their lives. Draxians were taught from hatching to control themselves, to show no weakness. They were proud of this discipline. It made them strong. But what had that strength cost them? How many Draxians suffered in silence, unable to ask for help because asking was seen as failure? How many children grew up never learning how to comfort others because they had never been comforted themselves? "On my world," he said slowly, "we believe that emotions are obstacles to overcome. We train ourselves to ignore them, to make decisions based on logic and duty alone." "How's that working out?" Kate asked, with a slight smile. The Emperor looked at Kirek, who was laughing at something Amy had said. "Not as well as I thought." Over the following days, these conversations continued. Vexar Khan found himself talking about things he had never discussed with anyone. He spoke about his mate, about how their marriage had been arranged for political reasons, but had grown into genuine partnership. He told them how she had been the emotional center of their family, the one who knew how to comfort Kirek when he was upset, who could make the Emperor laugh after difficult days in court. "I thought I was being strong by not showing my grief," he admitted one evening. "I thought I was setting a good example for Kirek, but I see now that I was just teaching him to suffer alone." Amy reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The touch was brief, simple, but it sent warmth through his entire body. Her skin was so soft compared to his scales, so fragile, yet there was strength in that gentleness. "You're learning now," she said. "That's what matters." Kirek thrived in this new environment. The humans who worked at the cozy corner treated him like any other child, not like the heir to an empire. They brought him picture books from Earth and taught him games. They asked him about his favorite things and actually listened to his answers. They hugged him freely, and Kirek learned to hug back. One afternoon, a human man named Greg, who worked in the kitchen, brought out a small toy, a stuffed animal shaped like an earth creature called a bear. "My daughter outgrew this," he said to Kirek. "I thought you might like it." Kirek clutched the toy to his chest, his eyes wide. "For me? Sure, kid. Everyone needs a friend to hug when they're sad." The Emperor watched his son accept this gift from a stranger, this simple act of kindness that expected nothing in return. In Draxian culture, gifts always came with obligations, but this human gave freely, just because he saw a child who might enjoy a toy. Vexar Khan began to notice other things about humans. They touched each other constantly. Hugs and handshakes and pats on the back. They laughed easily, finding humor in small mistakes and daily absurdities. They asked each other, "How are you doing?" and genuinely wanted to know the answer. These behaviors created bonds between them, connections that had nothing to do with rank or duty. A human worker was friends with the station commander. Rich merchants ate lunch with mechanics. They disagreed and argued and made up, all without formal protocols or elaborate face-saving measures. It was messy and emotional and sometimes loud. And it was also beautiful. Amy noticed his observation one day. "You're watching us a lot," she said with a smile. "Like we're some kind of science experiment." "I am trying to understand," the Emperor admitted. "Your species is very different from mine." "Different how?" "You feel everything so openly. You are not afraid to show when you are happy, or sad, or angry. My people would see that as weakness." Amy thought about this. Maybe it takes more courage to be honest about how you feel. It's easy to hide behind a mask. It's harder to let people see the real you. Those words stayed with Vexar Khan long after the conversation ended. All his life, he had worn masks. The mask of the Emperor, strong and unshakable. The mask of the warrior, fearless in battle. The mask of the leader, always knowing the right answer. He had worn these masks for so long that he had forgotten there was a person underneath. But Amy saw that person. When she looked at him, she did not see an emperor or a dragon or an alien species. She saw a father trying to help his grieving son. She saw someone who was hurting and learning to heal. She saw him, and slowly, carefully, Vexar Khan realized he was seeing her too. Not just as the kind human who had helped Kirek, but as someone special in her own right. He found himself looking forward to their daily visits not just for his son but for himself. He enjoyed talking with her, hearing her laugh, watching the way her face lit up when she was excited about something. One evening, after Kirek had fallen asleep in the booth, worn out from playing with the other human children who had been in the restaurant, Amy sat with the Emperor in comfortable silence. The lights in the restaurant were dimmed, and most of the other customers had left. "Can I ask you something personal?" Amy said quietly. "Yes. What was your wife like? If it's okay to talk about her." Vexar Khan felt the familiar ache in his chest, but it was softer now, less sharp. She was wise. She understood people in a way I never have. She could look at someone and know what they needed, what they were feeling, even when they tried to hide it. She sounds wonderful. She was. And I never told her enough. I thought she knew. That I did not need to say the words. But now I think maybe I should have said them more. Amy nodded. We humans say I love you a lot. Maybe too much sometimes. But I think it's important to make sure people know how you feel about them while you still can. The Emperor looked at this young woman who had changed his life without even trying. She had shown him a different way to be strong, taught him that kindness was not weakness. That feeling deeply was a kind of courage, and somewhere along the way, she had become important to him in a way he was only beginning to understand. The message arrived on the third week of their stay. Vexar Khan was in the cozy corner, watching Kirek draw pictures with colored pencils Amy had given him. When his communication device buzzed with urgent priority, he looked at the screen and felt his good mood drain away. Lord Zethys was coming to the station. He would arrive within the day. Kate noticed the change in the Emperor's expression. Bad news? My chief advisor is coming. He will want me to return home. Is that what you want? Vexar Khan looked at his son, who was happily showing Amy a drawing of their family. Kirek had included Amy in the picture, standing beside him and his father. What I want, and what I must do, are often different things. Lord Zethys arrived that evening. He was ancient even by Draxian standards, his dark red scales scarred from 1,000 battles. He had served as advisor to 3 emperors, and did not believe in wasting time with gentle approaches. He found Vexar Khan in the diplomatic quarters, reviewing reports from the homeworld. The advisor did not wait for greetings. You have been here too long. I will return when I am ready. The court talks, Your Majesty. They say you hide here because you cannot face your duties. They say the grief has weakened you. Let them talk. Some suggest your brother might be a better choice to lead. They grow bold in your absence. This made the Emperor look up sharply. Threats? Not yet, but questions. About your fitness to rule, about the heir spending time with aliens instead of learning proper Draxian ways. Vexar Khan felt anger flash through him. My son is learning kindness. He is learning that strength comes in many forms. These are valuable lessons. He is learning to be weak, Zethys said bluntly. He cries openly. He seeks comfort from strangers. He plays like a common child instead of training like a prince. This is what the humans have taught him. The humans have taught him to be happy again. That is more than our way could do. The advisor's eyes narrowed. You have grown attached to them, particularly to one of them. The Emperor said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. This is worse than I thought, Zethys said. Emotions cloud your judgment. These humans are nothing. A weak species that barely survived long enough to reach the stars. And you, the Emperor of the Draxian people, spend your time in their restaurant like a common citizen. I spend my time healing, something our culture does not value as it should. Our culture values strength, the advisor said firmly, and you are showing weakness. Return home. Resume your duties. Put this behind you like the warrior you were trained to be. But Vexar Khan had learned too much to simply obey. I will consider your counsel. Now leave me. Zethys departed, but the Emperor knew this was not over. The advisor would not give up easily. The next day, more Draxians arrived on the station. 5 nobles from prominent families, all loyal to the old ways. They made a show of visiting the Emperor, expressing concern for his well-being, but their real purpose became clear when they suggested dining together at a proper establishment, not the human restaurant he had been frequenting. Vexar Khan agreed, hoping to avoid conflict. But when he went to the cozy corner to tell Amy he would not be there that evening, he found Kirek already settled at their usual table, working on homework Amy had created for him. Simple math and reading exercises turned into games that made learning fun. Father, Kirek called out happily. Look, I can count to 100 in English now. One of the nobles who had followed the Emperor into the restaurant made a disgusted sound. Lady Syrinx, a female who had once been proposed as a potential mate for Vexar Khan, looked at Amy with cold eyes. This is the human, she said in Draxian, not bothering to speak common so Amy could understand. The one who has been corrupting the air. Amy did not know the words, but she understood the tone. She stood up from where she had been sitting with Kirek, her back straight. Can I help you? You can stay away from the prince, Syrinx said, switching to common now. He is not your concern. Kirek's scales turned pale. He looked between his father and the noble, fear clear on his face. This was the old way. The harsh treatment he had experienced in the months after his mother died. He grabbed Amy's hand. She's my friend, he said in a small voice. Friends? Syrinx laughed, the sound harsh. Draxian princes do not have friends among lesser species. You have much to learn, young one. And you will learn it properly, away from these influences. That is enough, Vexar Khan said, his voice carrying the weight of command. But Sarex was not finished. With respect, Your Majesty, the court is concerned. The heir shows none of the proper behaviors. He is soft, emotional, dependent on alien comfort. Perhaps it would be best if he was returned to the homeworld ahead of you, placed in the care of proper tutors who can undo this damage. The restaurant had gone quiet. Every human present could feel the tension, even if they did not understand all the words. Kate Morrison moved closer, her military instincts telling her this situation could turn dangerous. Kirek began to cry. Not the loud wailing of before, but quiet tears of fear. He pressed himself against Amy, and she wrapped her arms around him protectively without thinking. This gesture, simple and instinctive, enraged Sarex. You see? The child runs to an alien for comfort. This is exactly the problem. He has forgotten what it means to be Draxian. He remembers what it means to be loved, Amy said quietly, her voice shaking but firm. Maybe that's more important. You dare speak to me. You are nothing. A servant in a restaurant. Presuming to teach an emperor's son. Your species has been in space for barely a generation. What could you possibly teach him that matters? Amy's eyes flashed with anger. But she kept her voice level. I taught him that it's okay to be sad. That grief doesn't make you weak. That asking for help is brave. And I would teach him those things again. Because they're true. Vexar Khan felt something break inside him. He had been trying to balance the old ways with what he had learned. Trying to satisfy both the court's expectations and his own growing understanding. But watching Sarex insult Amy, seeing Kirek terrified that he might be taken away, the Emperor realized he could not serve two masters. He had to choose. That evening, the nobles arranged a formal dinner in the diplomatic wing. They served traditional Draxian food and spoke of duties and responsibilities. They reminded Vexar Khan of his obligations, of the empire that needed him, of the centuries of tradition he was meant to uphold. Kirek sat beside his father, silent and unhappy. He had not wanted to come, had begged to stay at the cozy corner. But the Emperor had insisted, trying to show his people that he had not forgotten who he was. The meal was halfway through when Kirek's control finally broke. All the pressure, all the harsh words, all the fear of being sent away from the one person who made him feel safe. It all became too much. He started to cry again. The same heartbroken sound that had first filled the restaurant weeks ago. The nobles looked at him with disgust and disappointment. Lord Zethus shook his head sadly. You see, Your Majesty? The damage is done. The boy cannot even control himself through a simple meal. Sarex leaned forward. I maintain my position. The heir should be removed from your care temporarily. Sent home to proper teachers who can train him correctly. You clearly do not have time to manage both an empire and a troubled child. Kirek's crying grew louder. He stood up from his chair and did something no Draxian child would ever do in front of nobles. He shouted, in English, I want Amy. I want to go to the restaurant. The room froze. The heir to the Draxian Empire, demanding to see a human waitress. Speaking in an alien language. Crying openly before the highest members of the court. It was a scandal beyond imagining. Vexar Khan looked at his son, at the nobles, at the centuries of tradition that demanded he punish Kirek for this outburst. That required him to send his son away to be broken and remade into a proper prince. And he looked at what that tradition had cost him. His mate, who died helping others but never received help for herself because asking was seen as weak. His son, who nearly faded away from grief because no one taught him how to mourn. Himself, spending centuries hiding behind masks, never letting anyone see his true feelings, lonely even when surrounded by thousands. The humans had shown him a different way. They had saved his son with nothing but kindness. They had given him back something he did not even know he had lost. And now his people expected him to throw that away, to return to the cold isolation that passed for strength in Draxian culture. The Emperor stood up, his full height impressive even among his own tall people. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute authority of someone who had made an unshakable decision. No. The single word hung in the air like thunder. The nobles stared at their emperor, uncertain they had heard correctly. No one simply said no to the combined weight of the court's expectations. Vexar Khan picked up Kirek, holding his still-crying son close. "We are leaving. This dinner is over." "Your Majesty," Zethus began, his voice warning. "I said no," the Emperor repeated, his voice harder now. "No, you will not take my son from me. No, I will not pretend that grief is weakness. No, I will not return to the old ways that nearly destroyed us both." He walked toward the door, but Sarek stepped into his path. "You cannot simply walk away from your responsibilities. The court will not stand for this behavior. Then let them challenge me." Vexar Khan's eyes glowed with an inner fire. "Let anyone who thinks they can lead better than I step forward. We will settle it the traditional way." The room fell silent. No one wanted to face the Emperor in single combat, even if they questioned his judgment. He had not held the throne for 3 centuries. "By being weak, that's what I thought," Vexar Khan said. "Now move." Sarek stepped aside. The Emperor carried Kirek through the station corridors. His son clung to him, still crying, saying Amy's name over and over. Vexar Khan went straight to the cozy corner. Even though the restaurant had closed for the night, he knocked on the door until Kate answered, her hair messy from sleep. "We need Amy," the Emperor said simply. Kate took one look at Kirek and nodded. "Come in. I'll get her." Amy appeared a few minutes later, wearing sleep clothes. Her face creased from her pillow. But the moment she saw Kirek, she was fully alert. "What happened?" "They wanted to take him away," Vexar Khan said, his voice rough. "To send him home to be trained properly. To break him of everything you taught him." Amy's eyes flashed with anger. She took Kirek from his father's arms and sat down with him, holding him close. She began to hum, then to sing, the same gentle melodies that had worked before. Slowly, Kirek's crying quieted. Kate made tea and brought it to the table where Vexar Khan had collapsed into a chair. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to change everything." The Emperor called an official meeting the next morning. He gathered not just the nobles who had come to fetch him, but every Draxian on the station. He also invited representatives from other species, including humans. He wanted witnesses to what he was about to say. They assembled in a conference room large enough to hold them all. The nobles looked confident, certain they could pressure the Emperor into compliance with enough public scrutiny. They did not know him as well as they thought. Vexar Khan stood before them all, Kirek at his side holding his hand. The boy's scales were still dull with stress, but he stood straight, drawing strength from his father's presence. "I have been emperor for 300 years, Vexar Khan began. "In that time, I have led our people through wars and peace, expansion and consolidation. I have always done what I believed was best for the Draxian Empire." The nobles nodded, pleased with this traditional opening. "But I have been wrong," the Emperor continued, and the room stirred with surprise. "Not about strategy or policy or the big decisions of state. I have been wrong about something more fundamental. I have been wrong about what makes us strong." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his people. "We Draxians pride ourselves on discipline and control. We say emotions are weakness. We teach our children to hide their pain, to never ask for help, to face everything alone. We call this strength." "It is strength," Zethys said firmly. "It is what has made us great." Zethys, "No," Vexar Khan said. "It is what has made us lonely. It is what has made us cruel. And it is what nearly killed my son, too." He told them everything. How Kirek had stopped eating after his mother died. How the Emperor had tried every traditional method to help him, and failed. How a human woman with no power, no rank, and no training in their ways had saved his son with nothing but kindness and a song. The humans showed me that acknowledging pain takes more courage than hiding it. That asking for help is braver than suffering alone. That love and compassion are not weaknesses to overcome but strengths to embrace. Lady Sarek stood up. You speak like a human now, not a Draxian. They have corrupted you. They have taught me, Vexarchon corrected. And I am grateful for it. I return to our homeworld. But I do not return unchanged. I will begin reforms immediately. We will establish support centers for those who grieve. We will train counselors to help our people process emotions instead of suppressing them. We will teach our children that it is acceptable to cry, to feel, to need others. The nobles erupted in protest, calling the emperor's plans impossible, undignified, against all tradition. But Vexarchon spoke over them, his voice carrying the absolute authority of his rank. I am emperor. This is my decision. Any who wish to challenge it may challenge me directly. Otherwise, they will obey or resign their positions. The room fell silent again. The emperor's will was law, and they all knew it. I invite human advisors to our court, Vexarchon continued. Not to rule us, but to teach us. We will learn from their ways of handling emotions, of supporting each other, of building communities based on care rather than hierarchy alone. He looked at Kate Morrison. If you are willing, I would be honored to have you serve as consultant to the imperial court. Kate looked surprised but nodded slowly. I would be willing to discuss it. Good. The emperor turned to face all the assembled beings. Let it be known across the galaxy that the Draxian Empire is changing. We remain strong, but we will be strong in new ways. We will no longer confuse cruelty with discipline or isolation with independence. We will learn from those we once dismissed as weak, and we will be better for it. The meeting ended with the nobles angry but unable to act against their emperor's clear command. They would return home and spread word of these shocking changes. Some would resist, some would adapt, but all would obey, because Vexarchon had made his position clear. That evening, the emperor went to the cozy corner one last time. His ship would depart the next morning. Kirek was with him, holding his hand tightly, not wanting to let go. Amy was waiting for them at their usual table. She had prepared Kirek's favorite meal, and she sat with them as they ate. But there was sadness in her eyes now. The knowledge that this was goodbye. After Kirek finished eating, Kate took him to the kitchen to help make cookies. It was an obvious excuse to give the adults time alone, and they were both grateful for it. So you're really going? Amy said quietly. I have to. My people need me. Now more than ever. These reforms will not be easy. There will be resistance. Possibly even attempts to overthrow me. Will you be safe? I am always as safe as any ruler can be. But I am not going back alone. I take with me everything I learned here. Everything you taught me. Amy looked down at her hands. I just sang some songs. Kate's the one who talked philosophy with you. You did more than sing, Vexarchon said gently. He reached across the table and took her hand in both of his, marveling again at how soft and warm her skin felt. You showed me that kindness is strength. You saved my son. And you touched my heart in a way I did not know was possible. Amy's eyes filled with tears. I care about you too. Both of you. But I know this can't be anything more than friendship. You're an emperor. I'm just a waitress. We live in different worlds that are closer now than they were before, the emperor said. Amy, I cannot promise you anything. My duties are vast, my time limited. The politics of a relationship between us would be complicated beyond measure. I know. It's okay. I understand, but I can ask if you might visit our world someday. As my honored guest. As a friend. And perhaps, if the fates allow, we can discover if what exists between us might grow into something more. Amy smiled through her tears. I would like that. They sat together in comfortable silence until Kate brought Kirek back. The boy was covered in flour and grinning, holding a box of cookies he had helped decorate, but his smile faded when he realized what this evening meant. I don't want to go, he said, his voice small. Can't we stay longer? Amy knelt down to his level. Your people need you and your father. There are Draxians who feel sad like you did, and they need help. Your father is going to make sure they get that help. You can be part of that. But I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. But missing someone just means you love them. And love doesn't go away just because someone is far away. Kirek hugged her tightly. Amy sang to him one more time. A soft lullaby about stars and journeys and love that lasts forever. When the song ended, she pressed something into his hand. It was a small music player loaded with all the songs she had taught him. So you can listen whenever you need to, she said. Kirek clutched it like treasure. The Emperor stood, and Amy stood with him. They looked at each other for a long moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Finally, Vexar Khan spoke. Thank you, Amy Bennett, for everything. Take care of yourself, she said. And take care of him. I will, I promise. He wanted to say more, to tell her that she had changed him in fundamental ways, that he thought about her constantly, that leaving her felt like tearing away a piece of his heart. But words seemed insufficient, and time was short. Instead, he did something no Draxian emperor had done in public, in living memory. He pulled her into an embrace. Careful of his strength and his scales, Amy hugged him back, and for a moment, they simply held each other. Then he stepped back, took Kirek's hand, and walked out of the restaurant. 3 months later, Amy received a message on her personal device. It was from Vexar Khan, sent across the vast distance between the station and the Draxian homeworld. He told her about the changes he was implementing, the resistance he was facing, the small victories being won. He told her about Kirek, who was thriving in his new environment where emotions were now acceptable, who sang her songs to other young Draxians, and taught them it was okay to cry. And he told her that he thought of her often, that he hoped she was well, and that when the time was right, he would very much like her to visit. Amy wrote back, her heart light with hope. She told him about the restaurant, about the new customers from different worlds, about how she had started teaching children's music classes for the young ones of various species who lived on the station. She told him she would be honored to visit his world when circumstances allowed, and she told him something she had not dared say before, that she cared for him deeply, that their time together had changed her too, and that she believed some connections were worth fighting for, no matter how complicated they might be. In the Imperial Palace on the Draxian homeworld, the Emperor read her message 3 times. Then he played one of her songs, the lullaby she had first sung to Kirek, and let himself feel the full weight of his emotions. Hope, longing, affection that was growing into something deeper. He had learned that true strength included the courage to love. And for the first time in his long life, the Dragon Emperor was ready to be brave.